behind politics. Sports are right there. And this time of year in particular gets me fired up because I love NBA playoff basketball, especially this year, as the league has had discussions about, well, getting too soft. They're allowing more contact, more physical play. We're seeing more block shots. We're seeing more all around team defense. The hand check hasn't been brought back, and there haven't been any violent attempts to take people out at the rim a la the Detroit Pistons. But it's still, in my opinion, very interesting. So as we analyze last night, there seems to be a changing of the guard in the NBA, as this is the first playoffs in a long time that does not feature Stephen Curry or LeBron James. Hooray! At some point, it just becomes stale. Like a lot of fans who weren't Michael Jordan fans, his dominance over the league for such a long period of time became exhausting, especially to fans of teams like New York or LA or Seattle, who's now, of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder for you youngsters who don't remember that once upon a time OKC, who I don't understand why they have a professional basketball team, was actually the Seattle Supersonics. But at any rate, last night sort of put on full display the youth of the NBA, the future. And so did the night before. I mean, first we talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that was supposed to, according to all the pundits, get wiped out. Wiped out by the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant and Kevin Booker together, that's just too much for the Timberwolves, a young team, but with a 7'3" center and Rudy Gobert, a three-point shooting 6'11" power forward, and Karl Anthony Towns, also known as Cat, and the most explosive two-guard I've seen since MJ, including Kobe Bryant and Anthony Edwards. A consistent scorer who can hit threes from anywhere, who has an excellent post-up game, and has the physique to go with it. I mean, he is obviously so physically strong. And along with OKC, they are the only two teams that have yet to lose a game in this year's playoffs, and we are into the second round. Now, as for last night, we saw my Boston Celtics, with Jason Tatum having an off night, still win that game by over 20 points versus Cleveland. In my opinion, Cleveland is just too small. I do not believe that Spider Donovan Mitchell is 6'3". I'm sorry, I just don't. He looks like he's closer to 5'11", maybe 6 feet, which again makes what he does that much more impressive. He is a very impressive scorer. He scores almost at will. But if you allow him to score and even get 50 points, where is his support going to come from? Darius Garland, who is actually listed at 6'1", which I think is probably correct, and they're being guarded by 6'6" Jaylen Brown and 6'8" Jason Tatum. And I love the fact that Brown and Tatum were quick to run whoever was guarding them into the post. If it was an isolation, instead of trying to take them off the dribble, they just got them to the post. Now, as for Minnesota, Anthony Edwards, the Ant-Man, he has that smooth crossover one way, cross back over the other way, stop, pull up, fadeaway jumper. He has the baseline fadeaway, giving you shoulder fakes either direction. His game appears to be derived from that of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, as if those are the players he studied most, and his physical skill set matches up with them. So I have nothing but praise for Anthony Edwards, who I know gets a little too excited sometimes, and the referees are quick to throw a technical foul at him. But that's not necessarily his fault. The young man has talent. Not only that, like Michael Jordan, he can jump through the roof. and is a ruthless dunker. He'll posterize anybody, anytime, because young fella gets up, if you get what I'm saying. Now, as for the Oklahoma City Thunder, the number one overall seed in the Western Conference, they ran through their first round opponent and now face the Dallas Mavericks, led by Luka Doncic. Luka looks exhausted after a 7-game series versus the Clippers, where they were just ground into a powder. The Clippers should be an amazing team. They should be. Yet they were barely in the playoff picture somehow the last couple of years. Finally get into the playoffs. They don't have Kawhi Leonard. Surprise, surprise. Kawhi seems to have spent more time injured than he has actually on the court. But when he's been on the court, he has won championships with the San Antonio Spurs and with the Toronto Raptors. I don't know if this mashup of superstars from Russell Westbrook, Paul George, James Harden. James, I travel every time I touch the ball, Harden. And Kawhi, I can't play most games because I'm chronically injured, Leonard. I don't know what you do with such a heavily paid lineup, such a heavily paid roster, who lost in the first round again to the Dallas Mavs. It took 7 brutal games, and the young Oklahoma City Thunder hadn't played since April 29th. The game last night was on May 7th. So they have more than a week off between games. A chance for an already young and fresh and vibrant team to rejuvenate, to get healthy, to have everyone out on the floor, to have players like Chet Holmgren who can do so many things, to have players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is the only other player I see today that immediately makes me think of MJ or Kobe. Really. He is a silky, smooth player. Not necessarily the greatest three-point shooter of all time. If I had to rank clutch three-point shooters between Shai and Ant, I would have to go with Ant. I think he has a cleaner stroke. But that's not taking anything away from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, at this point, we're splitting hairs. These two guys, about the same height. I do think Ant-Man is the more physical player. He has a more dominant feel to his physicality. I mean, just look at that body. He's carved out of marble. That team is going to cause anyone they face, which I believe they will, eventually face someone in the Western Conference Final. I think they'll get through this semifinal. I don't know if they will lose a game after the way they played in Game 1. The same goes for Oklahoma City. They have an exhausted and limited Dallas Mavericks team in front of them. You never know what you're going to get out of Kyrie. And even in a game where Kyrie performed fairly well, he hit some amazing shots. He is one of the great shot makers in NBA history. A 6'2", 6'3" guard who can shoot on the move from 3, fading either direction, just has absolutely beautiful stroke. As for Luka, well, again, I don't know why he's bringing the ball up. He should be the primary scorer, not the primary ball handler. Get the ball to him in the high post and play him the way they've played other superstars in years past. Namely, players like Larry Bird, who, like Luka, was an excellent passer and can make those key moves, like the Joker, Jokic. It's something to say that Minnesota may not lose a game to the defending champions and last year's MVP and Luka Doncic. I'm sorry, and the Joker and Jokic. I don't know if they will. That's just one guy's opinion, but it certainly seems plausible to me that Minnesota's now, with a 2-game lead, going to go back to Minnesota to finish off Denver. And I do believe they'll probably close that out They've got 2 games left to go, and I think they'll probably handle it. But that, again, that's just my opinion. Who knows? It could be a 5, 6, 7 game series. Denver might suddenly get it together and all of a sudden, start hitting 25 threes a game and really make this competitive again. I don't see it. They have an answer for Jokic and Rudy Gobert. They have a second answer for Jokic and Karl Anthony Towns. However, Denver does not have an answer for players like Cat, who's basically 7 feet tall and rains threes, hits mid-range jump shots, is a solid shot blocker, a solid defender. Not the best, but solid. And then on the perimeter, of course, you have Anthony Edwards, who, my goodness, does this young man play defense? It's wonderful. It's a breath of fresh air to an old head like myself, recently turned 40 years old, who watched prime Michael Jordan, who watched that 95-96 Bulls team in absolute awe of their dominance. I didn't feel that with the Warriors team that went 73-9, and of course that feeling was later justified when they blew a 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals. Could any of us envision a Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen-led team losing a final series in which they were up 3-1? Could they even imagine that going beyond 5 games? Of course not, because it just wouldn't happen. That's not something that players like Scottie and MJ allowed to happen. And when they added Dennis Rodman for that second three-peat, they were essentially an immovable force, an immovable object. And now we've got 2 teams that seem to be on a collision course in Oklahoma City and Minnesota where, boy, I tell you, I can't pick a favorite in this one. Both teams have size. Both teams have perimeter players. Both teams have what are going to be future Hall of Famers. Both teams have generational talent. Now I'm talking generational offensive and defensive talent. They have everything that you need for a super exciting series. Now, in all fairness, I am a Boston Celtics fan. To me, the last great year was 2008 because that's when Paul George on my mind. The Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen led Celtics team won the 2008 NBA championship, sort of starting the, quote, super team era. Although the super team thing hasn't really worked out for anyone else, with the exception of Miami 2 of the 4 years they were together. In all fairness, it was kind of an embarrassment that without Ray Allen, they couldn't get over the hump and win a championship with so much star power. But, again, I've said time and time again that when it comes to comparing him to the greats of all time, LeBron is overrated. He's not, this is not some guy bashing LeBron James. I love LeBron. I love watching him play. I love his physicality. I'm going to miss him when he's gone. He has lived up to everyone's expectation. He's been to 10 NBA Finals, although he's lost more than he's won. But you can't compare him in any real way to the greats, the greatest of the greats. You just can't. Yeah, he's hung around for 21 or 22 years and broken Kareem's scoring record. Michael Jordan missed one entire season to injury and then was run out of the league at age 35, returned at age 38, and played till age 40. How many points? Where would MJ be on the all-time scoring leader chart if he had never retired? How many rings would he have gotten if he hadn't retired twice? Most people believe the Bulls go right through, get at least 7 out of 8 consecutive rings going from 1991 to 1998. Perhaps they slip up somewhere or an injury happens to Scottie or MJ and they're not able to quite get over the threshold. maybe they don't win all 8 championships. I believe they probably do, because that's the mentality of Michael Jordan. It was a win or go home type environment back then. And let's also remember that the pay in the NBA was so dramatically different that Michael Jordan only made a little over $90 million in his entire NBA career. That is from salaries, of course. Kevin Garnett, just one generation of players later, completed 3 $100 million contracts. Shaquille O'Neal completed at least 2, of which I'm aware. He may have completed more than that. And of course, he's gone on to buy big portions of one major business after another, businesses you wouldn't even expect. But he's been able to convert himself into a savvy businessman, much like Magic Johnson. Now, back to present day. The Celtics last night faced the Cavs. The Cavs have a problem that they cannot solve. They are too small. This is not me being biased because I'm a Celtics fan, but I saw Jason Tatum, who had a horrible night, really off night, despite the fact he still managed to get 18 points, and he helped out on the boards with 11 rebounds. He had a couple of block shots because he's guarding a guy who's listed at 6'3", who's really probably closer to 6 feet even, and Donovan Spida Mitchell. Spida played his rear end off. He really did. He put it out there. And he can score at will. Even for a little guy, he's so smooth. He's got the Euro step. He's explosive. He can get up in the air. He can drop 71 points. We all know that. We all know he can do all of these things. However, when faced with a big defender in either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum or even Derek White, who can match him for foot speed, and at 6'4" is probably 3 inches taller than Donovan Mitchell, again, despite the fact they list Mitchell at 6'3". Remember, once upon a time, the New York Knicks held that John Starks was 6'5", even when teammates said he was closer to 6'2" than 6'5". And when he was side by side with Michael Jordan, who's honestly about 6'5.5", he was considerably shorter than 6'5". Michael Jordan, again, about 6'5.5", calls himself 6'6", was listed at 6'6", but is not quite that tall. And then Dennis Rodman, a 6'6" power forward who set all of these NBA records for rebounding when he really shouldn't have been in the running. The big guys should have been getting all the rebounds. The Shaquille O'Neals, the David Robinsons of that era, the Patrick Ewings, but they didn't. It was undersized Dennis Rodman and undersized Charles Barkley. We don't throw Barkley enough love for what he was able to do at 6'4", 250, 260 pounds when he was in shape. An absolutely outstanding position rebounder and a guy for whom they had to change the rules of the game because of his ability to hold the ball and the high post and make things happen. That's where I think Dallas could do better with Luka. Run Luka into the high post, let him face guys up. He surveys the court as well as anyone in the league. We know he can pass like he has eyeballs in the back of his head. Let him do that. Let him create for other guys. Let these guys get their three-pointers in. Let these guys get their slashes to the rim and their easy dunks. That's their route to at least winning one game against a young, enthusiastic, talented, number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder team. Now, back to Boston and Cleveland for a moment. Again, Cleveland can't fix the issue of just being too little. They can't. They can't do anything about it. One of your 2 guards is going to be guarded by 6'6" Jaylen Brown, who, when you add his pure physical stature into it, is a very big man, much bigger than Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. And that's no knock on them. They are excellent for what they are able to do, but they need size back there somewhere, and they can't get it, not right now. Spider Mitchell is as good a scorer as there is in the NBA. That goes for everybody from Giannis to Dame to LeBron and Steph and whoever else you want to throw in the mix. The kid can get to the rack and score. He can hit those long threes. He can do it all. We saw him get, I think, 71 in the regular season this year. He got 50 a handful of times. I mean, he has all the skill in the world. But at some point, you're just limited. You're limited because of your size. You saw him get shots deflected and knocked away by Jason Tatum, who was switched on to him quite a few times. These guys have the athleticism and the strength to stay with them, and I don't know what they really do. If Derek White continues his streak, then Boston will win it all. They will take home their first NBA championship since 2008. Derek White blowing up, hitting 7 threes, scoring 25 points in all. Tatum only getting the 18 points from the free throw line, layups, things of that nature. The three ball was completely missing from his game last night. Even mid-range jumpers didn't seem to want to fall for Tatum. But when he would get into the post, he could get these smaller players on his back, and either Garland or Mitchell, and just turn and score off the glass. Easy peasy. Nothing hard about it. Then you add Jaylen Brown to the mix. My goodness. And Jaylen Brown, again, his physical stature is just so impressive. He has it all. And he's another one of those players you can kind of draw some comparison to when it comes to players like MJ, like great players of the past. He has that physical stature. He's long and lean, but at the same time, about as muscular and big as you would want a guard to be. Because if he were any bigger, any stronger, then it would slow him down. Not to mention, he might be, constantly plagued with injuries, like Zion Williamson. I called that a bust on Twitter way back when it happened. Look, when you're 300 pounds at 6'5", and you have to fight your way back into weight in every preseason, and by the way, in shape is like 270, that 40-inch vertical goes out the window pretty quickly. He's been effective to some extent, but he hasn't been able to stay on the floor. Why? Well, he's too damn big. He's too heavy. It's just that simple. But I'm absolutely stoked. I hope to see, and I think it would be great for the league, if the Eastern Conference Final came down to Boston and New York. My God, that evokes memories of the 1960s and 70s. Boston, New York, Red Sox, Yankees. The two teams, the two cities that compete most fiercely for the number one spot in baseball and basketball, with an opportunity to go heads up in an Eastern Conference Final. Not only that, but I think it would be a compelling Eastern Conference Final. Although I do believe that New York would run into the same problem Cleveland has, and that's size. Your best players can't grow overnight 3 or 4 inches. I don't know where they list. Name is. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there for a second. Of course, Jalen Brunson can't grow. I mean, he looks like he's about 5'11" out there. I don't know his exact height. I haven't looked it up, but he's probably listed at 6'2" or something like that. And we've seen video of him out off the court that, in my eyes, proves he's probably no taller than 5'11" to 6 feet. But he's a scoring juggernaut. He can hit it from anywhere. But where are they going to get the support necessary to get past a team with the depth and the size of the Boston Celtics, especially once Porzingis is back? Now you've added a 7-3 forward, because he's not a center, a 7-3 forward who can handle the ball, get to the rack, shoot threes. You have Al Horford, who's 6'9", 6'10", who's going to play that traditional center role for you, who can also hit threes. And then you've got a 6'8 small forward, a 6'6 shooting guard, a 6'4 point guard. And then you got size coming off the bench. I mean, even Giddey, is that his last name? I think it is. Giddey is 6'8". This is a big, powerful team, and I'm excited to see what happens. Really excited to see what happens with this team. Anyway, now, transitioning for a moment back to what happened yesterday as Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels, took the stand, and her story sort of changed and went back and forth. The essential part of the case has nothing to do with whether or not every word of every sentence that Stormy Daniels has spoken about the Trump affair is 100% true. It's about whether or not the payment was made and then covered up. The two of them obviously had sex. We know that. Why would you pay a woman $130,000 to not have sex with you? She was shopping the story because the story was true. There are photographs of them together. They spent time together, and Karen McDougal supposedly ended her relationship with Dementia J. Trump, not because of his diapers, but because she didn't want to be cheated on with a porn star, despite the fact she was already in an affair because Trump was married to Melania at the time. But it does the defense in this case a lot of good to be able to attack the credibility of a key witness, to go after her character. Because, after all, if you're going to demean the character of someone, you have to start with someone willing to work for Donald Trump, willing to work for Fox News. To me, I'm agnostic on whether or not pornographic work is good, bad. I'm completely indifferent. I don't care. But I think it takes fewer scruples, fewer morals to take a job with OANN or with Newsmax or with Fox, or at this point even with the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. The New York Times, of course, continuing its vendetta against the Biden administration for not getting what they perceive to be their God-given right to a sit-down exclusive interview with the President of the United States. Because, they used to be important in the 70s or 80s, and they keep wishing and hoping, just like television executives, that they'll wake up and it'll be 1998 all over again. Yes, it'll be 1998. It won't matter, and our ratings won't be going in the toilet. That includes MSNBC and NBC. That includes CBS and ABC. ABC seeming to be the only one that really gives a darn at this point. The only one I can even stand to listen to is George Stephanopoulos. Has some truth to speak. But Kristi Noem has continued her tour of defense and doubling and quadrupling down on her puppy murder, her goat murder, and of course the lies about meeting Kim Jong-un, which she did not. She's tried to blame it on everyone, finally saying she owns it, but she doesn't want to talk about it because, of course not, it's an embarrassment. It's a black eye. It's probably taking her out of the race to be Trump's VP pick, which I think doesn't matter at all. God help us, we don't want Donald Trump anywhere near the nuclear codes of the White House ever again. So whoever his stooge is going to be this time around has to be a complete sycophant. There will be nobody there with even a little bit of a conscience, not a modicum of decency, like Mike Pence. And if there's any violence this January 6th, and Biden has won the election, it'll be stamped out like an old cigarette. Well, with that being said, there's not a lot more going on. There's some bad weather that's expected across the Midwest and even here in Tennessee later today and throughout the rest of the week. We want to wish everybody and hope that everyone stays safe, stays away from any impending tornadoes or anything else that might fall out of the sky on us. We certainly don't want that for anybody. So, till the next time, this is Jonathan M. Ruggiero with the Magnolia Media Network saying sincerely, stay safe out there, especially if the weather really turns nasty, especially in the center west and midwest part of the United States, including, again, our own state here in Tennessee and the rest of the southeast. Avoid those nasty storms. Don't test flooded roads. And, do the best you can. Again, signing off from the Magnolia Media Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Jonathan M. Ruggiero. Till next time, be well.